The short answer to that question is an emphatic yes, particularly when you partner with the Neuro Leadership Institute. Today, we'll share how that's possible, along with all the ingredients of success for a successful leadership development experience. On the call today, I'm delighted to be joined by Polly Lerner, Capability Director and our partner at Haleon, who we've partnered with over the last 2 years to craft a custom leadership development solution. I'm also joined with my colleague Amy Mickle, Insight Manager here at NLI, who, along with myself and many other colleagues, has partnered together to craft a custom leadership development offering for first-line leaders. So today we'll engage in a dialogue and we'll share how we've worked together with Haleon to develop a custom lead program, which we've developed at pace and scale and ensured it's rigorous, robust, and an impactful learning experience with science at its heart. Interactivity is actively encouraged in this session, so please use the Q&A function and put in any questions that you might have into the chat, and we'll answer as many as we can in the summit session today. So let's dive straight in. In late 2022, NLI was approached by a brand new leading healthcare consumer company, and they were eager to activate leadership standards at scale across their organization, particularly with first-line leaders. So I'm really keen to bring Polly into the conversation, and she can share with us how our partnership started and how we've activated new leadership standards at scale across the first-line leader population. So Polly, welcome to today's session. And could you start by introducing who Haleon is and sharing with our audience the key leadership development challenges that led to the creation of the custom First Line Leader program?
Sure. Thank you, Ross. And thank you, first of all, for inviting me and Haleon here to tell the story. Delighted to be here. And so Haleon, first of all, Haleon was born in July 2022. And the word Haleon comes from two words. Hale is the Old English word for health, and Leon is the lion and synonymous with strength. So we were forming a brand new company, and it formed as a result of a demerger from GSK, or GlaxoSmithKline, for those that know it that way, and also following previous joint ventures with the consumer healthcare divisions of Novartis and Pfizer. So we were effectively bringing all of that together, listing on the London and the New York Stock Exchange as a brand new company. And we were a £10 billion startup company. We were in a completely new industry, moving from pharmaceutical sector to FMCG sector. So new analysts, new investors, and definitely an increase of scrutiny on our performance and our results. So that was Haleon was born. And we were the first unique consumer healthcare company. And we had a fantastic purpose, and we still have that purpose, to deliver better everyday health with humanity. We've got 22,000 colleagues, just to give a bit of a scale to Haleon, 22,000 colleagues across the world, across research and development, commercial, quality and supply chain organisation, and 24 global manufacturing sites across the world. So our whole ethos was about trusted science and deep human understanding. And we've needed to adapt and move into this new environment. We wanted to bring the strengths of the legacy with us, but we needed to make a real shift. And leadership was key to that. So I know we'll get into that.
Thanks, Polly, for that introduction to Haleon and sharing with us the startup culture that you've got there. And I want to bring Amy into the conversation now. And Amy, you were instrumental at the beginning of our partnership back in 2022, which just in some ways feels like yesterday and in other ways a long time away. We undertook deep consulting work with Haleon, and I'm wondering if you and Polly could summarize how NLI partnered to discover that overall business need of the first line leaders within Haleon and share what this was.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. And I appreciate the invitation to join today's discussion. This is such an exciting program to discuss. I will actually begin answering that question by turning to you, Polly. I know that when we started this program design 2 years ago, it started with a simple request of, can you build and deliver a first line leader program? But from Haleon's perspective, I'd really love to hear more of the business need that we were seeking to solve. So we know a little bit of the start of Haleon's story, but can you tell us a bit about what offering a program like this for your first line leader population was intended to do, and maybe help us align that with Haleon's business transition at the time?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Amy. And as I said, we had the legacy, fantastic legacy of three businesses to be able to come forward. And that new industry, new environment. We needed to change our leadership mindset and behaviors to really adapt to our new environment. We were trying to do three things. We were trying to be purpose-led, consumer-focused, and performance-driven. So that was really what the strategy to bring forward for the company. And you can see here on the screen, we introduced some leadership standards. And these standards were about, in order for us to be purpose-led, consumer-focused, and performance-driven, what did a Haleon leader need to look like? What did it need to mean? And if I think about those three things, purpose-led means we were an unknown. Haleon, is an unknown brand. We're still building that brand internally and externally, but internally we needed to help our own people to shift and be inspired in our purpose and going forward. So the purpose-led was incredibly important to us. The consumer focus meant we needed to, again, shift from thinking of the patient at the end of the supply chain to thinking of our consumers in the FMCG world, with agility, thinking of innovation to drive the growth. So really sort of bringing that consumer and customer focus forward. And the performance-driven side of things meant, we needed to maximize the potential of our own people, our teams, and we also needed to hold them to account and drive performance very transparently with them. So, we recognize that first-line leaders, obviously we've got different levels of leaders throughout the organization, but we actually consciously chose to start with the first-line leader population in that. We decided to focus on them because whether they're in sales, research, laboratories, or at the manufacturing sites, that population has a significant influence over large teams often. And so that was really sort of the tipping point of our change. So that's sort of why we focused on them and, what we focused on them. As you can see, it really aligned to our leadership standards. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, Polly, that's very helpful. Ross, I'd love to transfer this back to you a bit. I know our partnership started with Haleon a couple years ago. Can you just walk us through a little bit about how that journey began?
Of course, and really, thanks, Amy. So back in 2022, we began our partnership, and I guess, really, Polly, I want to ask you to elaborate and really share, what the thinking was from Haleon on your decision to partner with the Neuro Leadership Institute, how that came about, and in particular, what made NLI stand out in that competitive tender process that you undertook back in late 2022.
Yeah, my pleasure, and obviously happy to be here to do that. So when we were looking for our new, to really bring some focus into the leadership development, we went into a competitive tendering process, as you would expect. And we had some very reputable organisations sort of in that process. But our initial findings just didn't quite find what we were looking for. So we ended up expanding the search. And that's when NLI came into the vision of the party. And it's fair to say that, we chose NLI because you stood out. Very quickly, we knew that it aligned with our trusted science and deep human understanding. So, your background, your whole, unquestionable research-based leadership and neuroscience that comes into the whole of NLI was really that trusted science that we needed to bring this program forward. But we liked the what it was that you were suggesting, so the science, but the behaviour change. There was very much a focus on sort of less is more, and let's build the things that we need to really create that behaviour change. So what was sort of, what you could bring to us in that trusted science, deep human understanding. We also very much saw NLI as really proposing those useful tools, habits, the systems that people can apply in their everyday leadership life. And I guess that's the less is more bit. But you're a global presence, and what we particularly needed as well at the time was to be able to execute this at pace. We knew how important the leadership culture and change was in order for us to set up, and we were starting from that standing start in July 22. So we needed to really sort of execute at pace and bring you in and be able to deliver a global program in a short space of time. So I guess lastly, flexible, client-focused approach that you showed, and we have seen sort of throughout that. We just knew that you guys were people that we were quite happy to work with, and that's important in a program like this.
Yeah, and it's definitely felt like we've been partners throughout the program
Yeah.
and our partnership. And just really, I guess, diving into what we've done in terms of bringing this to life at the beginning. When we were having those conversations and discussions in late 2022, science was at the heart of it for you and for NLI. And we've developed a whole custom program and learning experience based on the extensive knowledge of neuroscience, as you would expect from the Neuro Leadership Institute, and our fundamental understanding on how the brain works. And so we'll come to that in a moment, where Amy will walk us through about that habit formation. We really care about driving that behavior change with the first line leaders. And our whole curriculum and program design and participant experience was based on our AGES model, which is, in short, just really our way to make sure that learning sticks. And our understanding of how the brain works enables us to create those learning experiences that maximize insight generation. And we know that because where people have those eureka moments and insight generation, they're more likely to then enact the behavior change that we're looking to bring to life and really enact those leadership standards. One of the other really exciting elements of this program and in our partnership has been weaving in some of NLI's key models. So this is a custom program, but we've woven into the architecture of the program our SCARF model. And we know that the SCARF model is a tried and tested model that by understanding how the brain works, you can drive performance, engagement, and motivation across your teams, which are just some of the behaviors where we're really looking to drive with our Haleon first line leaders. And we knew that for this program in partnership, we could deliver this program virtually and in person to meet that business need. And we'll come to some of that later on in our conversation this morning. Please do share any questions that you have in the Q&A function. We love receiving your questions, and it just helps us ensure that we are engaging with you and telling you what you want to hear. I'm going to move the conversation on to Amy to bring you in now. In sharing, we've talked a couple of times about we've developed this program in less than 6 months. So we started in December 2022. By May 2023, we were delivering this program. So could you just really walk us through that journey?
Yes, of course. You were right that it was very fast paced. And as Polly mentioned earlier, we really needed to meet the needs of Haleon at speed and scale. So we started first with the recommended step of consultancy. We are always going to be better at meeting our mark if we define it first. So in that first phase here, we focused very closely on what is the need for Haleon, what are the objectives of this program, and what are the program constraints that we really need to focus on to make sure that this program meets those global varied needs. So the output of that first phase was a learning strategy. We were very intentional to map out the content, the program flow, and make sure that the desired behaviors that Haleon needed in those leaders were built into the program from the foundation. Then we could move to the second phase here, which we have as a design sprint. So we moved very quickly from the idea down to brass tacks project plans. What is the content? What does it look like? What does it feel like? That whole process was maybe 2 months or so between thinking about what that really is going to be to having the first module of this 5 module program built and ready. This is largely facilitator-led, if not exclusively facilitator-led. So we also needed to make sure that we had our facilitator pool upskilled and ready. So there were lots of different work streams going on, and that partnership that we've discussed was really vital in making that happen. And that brought us to this third phase here of launching the program in May of 2023. And really, because this was a modular program, we were setting the tone in Module 1 for what the program was going to look like, and we could continue to build in that likeness throughout the year, allowing that program to start early, and we were able to push the cohorts through quite quickly. One thing that I will elaborate on here is that module design, which I think is really critical, both building on the Haleon standards and developing a program that could be this versatile. So in this next visual, we have the modules of the program broken down into these 5 main themes or buckets. From a learning experience, what this means for the learner is that you want to go through phase or module 1 all the way through module 5 in sequential order. And that allows us to build each concept one on the other, which helps with that habit formation and adoption. But each module also offers a unique set of habits to practice. They're all individually set on a core foundation of neuroscience. So we're back to that science-centric foundation. And all of them allow for a robust learning experience with a facilitator and coaching opportunities alongside. So at the end of this program, you have anywhere from maybe 5 or 10 sessions that are all virtually delivered, or 2 multi-day sessions that you're walking through with a facilitator that's guiding that whole program. So we've ended up building a very robust program. And as you can see here, we've also needed to expand how we might deliver it. So offering both virtual and in-person sessions allows for a varied experience, and we can reach those global audiences. We've built this to be led by NLI facilitators who are embedded in the science and can speak it and bring it to life very easily for Haleon leaders. We've also worked on a train the trainer program for this experience so that it can be delivered within Haleon's ecosystem, which is another level of versatility that we are thrilled to offer. And then again, that last point just speaks to the global nature of this program and to the nature of our companies. So we've translated everything we've built across 10 different languages and are, I think, always delivering something somewhere on the globe. But I would like to pause here and bring Polly back into the conversation. Polly, you partnered with us in that very early stage as we were mapping this out, which I'm sure was a daunting experience for all sides because we were trying to solve a really big problem. But could you tell me just a little bit about your experience in this design process?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Amy. And it's great to just sit and listen to you sort of replaying that. And it brought back many, many memories from the beginning of the design. And, you know, we've worked, I guess, as a partnership throughout this. I remember sitting in London in an office with various of my colleagues from different divisions within Haleon and your team, and being able to really spend quality time in the discovery and the design stage. And that was so important. And that was really the start of the partnership that I would describe between us. And I remember spending time there with your colleagues where we're being taught about, you know, the learning science and the science of leadership, and being introduced to the models and the habits first. And that was really powerful. And, you know, the SCARF model has stuck with me through everything sort of since then. So actually we were sort of being trained in the neuroscience as part of that discovery work. But then we also spend a lot of time in the discovery stage of what are the pain points of our leaders? What are we trying to achieve with our leadership standards? The question you asked before about what are the critical capabilities? You know, what works, what doesn't work? How do we want to bring this forward? Which order do we want to bring these modules forward in? Yes, they are sort of independent modules, but they fit together as a journey. So, what message did we want to bring by the choices that we made? So it felt like very much a partnership for me from that very early stage through to regular implementation and sort of project meetings as we got into that stage, and then obviously after action sort of reviews, discussions, talking about the impact of it. And we had to flex, I guess, from both sides as we went through, as you would expect in a partnership. And we had some different needs, and I think we'll come on to those. And needed to find a sort of a way forward for some of them. So thanks, Amy.
Yeah, agreed. But I'd love to pause there and elaborate a bit on some of those different needs that we needed to accommodate. So I know when we were having those early discussions, you were one of many that were voicing that leaders within Haleon don't all have a shared work-life experience, right? They may be located in different places. They may have different team norms and dynamics, and their time for learning might be varied and different. So one of those early challenges I know was about how to reach them appropriately, but I'd love to hear more from you about those specific challenges that we were truly trying to address for your leadership audience, and maybe how we ended up with our dual design in this program.
Yeah, sure. So you're right. A multifaceted global organization was always going to have some challenges in there. And like most or many organizations, we've moved to a lot of virtual learning over recent years. And we're really confident that, virtual learning, instructor-led, when it's done right, when we've, really considered the cohorts and the collaboration that you get from that, can be really, really effective. So we probably went into this initial design with that virtual instructor-led learning in mind. And I do represent strongly the quality and supply chain division of Haleon. And there were challenges there that I really wanted to bring to the table. And I'd spent a long time learning from the past, learning from what had worked for us in the past before. Why did we have sort of low take up to some of our leadership programs? We know, certainly if I think of the manufacturing sites population, we're often in a sort of a deliver today mode, a reactive mode. Time is short, people are on shifts. Logistically, it's a challenge to get people sort of away from the lines into an office-based instructor-led training. So we'd had low take-up of programs in the past. But I spend a lot of time, therefore, with the sites and with that population, with the site directors, with the teams at the sites to really understand what they needed from the design. We were clear what we needed from the capabilities and the content, but in terms of that design. And what became very clear very quickly was that in person, face to face, in local language was a non-negotiable. So I brought that, I remember bringing that back to the table and saying, so how do we make that happen? And if I think about it, these leaders, first line leaders at sites, are often internally promoted. Their English is not necessarily their first language, and they're definitely not as used to coming into a virtual environment as many of us are today. So that was really why we were sort of catering to that need. We then had to sort of think about the logistics of that. Was it okay to bring people, offline, off shift for a 90-minute session, which was our sort of initial module program, or was that harder to manage? And we had many discussions. And great to see on this slide, the second version, and I think there were a few iterations before we got to this final second version, which was a 2-day event. So we offer a 1 day covering 3 of the modules, and 3 months later, come back for the second day covering the other 2 modules. And obviously I remember we had lots of conversations about the balance that had to be struck there, because the learning science and the spacing that was important to learn, practice, habit before you went to sort of the next module, we were really asking you to compromise on. And so we knew there was going to be a balance to be made. So we tried to create that into a 1-day event and then stage out some of the habit building and activities over sort of month 2 and 3 before people came back to the classroom. So yeah, it was some compromises to be made along the way, but it meant we had a really, a fantastic virtual program and a fantastic face-to-face option for those sites.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's a great summary. And I love your word compromise, but I will also say it was a great challenge for us to then think about how do we follow our own science around grabbing attention and making sure they have an opportunity to generate their own insights and have that eureka moment, and also space out the learning so that we're not overwhelming them when we give them new information. So I think, yes, maybe it was a compromise because we had an original design, but really it was a healthy challenge and a great debate, because what we ended up with, what we're seeing on the slide here, are two unique delivery methods of the exact same program.
Yeah.
And having built this out, and now we've seen it go across so many locations, in person and in virtual, I feel really confident that we're meeting the same objectives in the same way, no matter which track is chosen by the learner. So in this first track, if everyone's virtual, they're getting really intense focused time on one module. And then they come back a couple weeks later with their same cohort and an NLI facilitator, and they get to have some coaching on what they've learned, which is a really lovely model of spacing. And each module is a rinse and repeat of that structure. So over the course of 5 months, they're meeting 10 times and have these smaller, bite-sized learning opportunities. And with this in-person track, on the second rung, we have, as Polly mentioned, we've condensed that learning into a single day event, but we've spaced them over the course of 2 to 3 months. And we're not asking that they learn everything and then remember it 3 months later. We've given repeated opportunities throughout those second and third months to meet with their colleagues, to meet as a team, to have a discussion. It's the lower level of commitment in those months, but the opportunity to then space that learning and recall it over the course of time is still built into the program, alongside facilitation guidance and coaching discussions, which is really at the heart of this program design. And I'm, again, really thrilled to say that no matter which track is chosen, the same support materials were also available. So we didn't need to change the messaging at all. So at the end of each thematic module, we also included a mission to allow those habits to become very accessible and plug right into their workflow. We were able to produce practice tools and guides to help you have a conversation using those habits that we've just taught, and additional research summaries that allow for just a little bit deeper dive on the science that was taught in the modules. And each section supports those materials and vice versa. And when we zoom out and look at the whole learner's experience, the journey is really quite the same. So at the beginning of the program, when someone within Haleon says, I'd really like to join this program, they are greeted with a video from the Haleon CEO saying, this is a program that we've built. This is supporting our standards. This is helping us reach our goals. This is good for us. This is good for you. This is valued. Take this time and enjoy it. Then there's also custom communications that we've built alongside Haleon. So this is, again, that partnership at work that is supporting getting that learner from I've been invited to here I am on my first day, my first module, my first session. Then in that middle rung here, during the lead program, whether or not they are in person or virtual, they are supported by very interactive sessions, well-versed facilitation teams, and again, all of those resources that we talked about that help keep that habit activation possible for that ultimate goal of behavior change. And at the end of the program, we offer them some questions to ask or to answer to really measure what is the impact of that behavior change from this program. And interestingly enough, this is a more robust questionnaire than just how did you feel about the program? This is looking at, were you able to adopt these habits? What does your line manager say about this program and their ability to see this habit change, this behavior change in you, and also to their direct reports? So we are supporting the first line leader from all angles as they go through this program. And with that, I'd love to pass this back over to you, Ross, because I know behavior change is something we talk about a lot and we care about it a lot, but I'd love to have you go through a bit more about what we mean by that term and how we go about measuring it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy. And a quick reflection on a word that both you and Polly mentioned is compromise. Is that although we compromise, it never felt like a compromise. And on this data that I'm about to share on the impact, because we really care about the impact of our programs. You know, we really care, are people applying these habits are going to lead to that long-term behavior change? We've not seen a compromise. We've not seen a compromise in terms of the difference in the data between virtual and in-person delivery from this custom program. And I think that's testament to the program that you've built, Amy, and that we've rolled out with our partner Haleon, where it's really built a rigorous science and really robust learning design, which has then enabled us to then deliver a really highly impactful program. So as I share with you the impact of the LEAD program, I want to just give you an overall summary of how we designed our custom measurement approach with Haleon. And what we did is that we took our approach to measure impact in two main ways. One, we have our participant impact questionnaire, or a PIC. We love an acronym at NLI. And that PIC is an immediate reflection, pulse check and a health check post module one to give us immediate feedback on the quality of the faculty and crucially, the usefulness of the module content. But what we care about really is that longer term behavior change. And so what we did is we created a sophisticated behavior change assessment. And this is our holistic assessment tool where we measure is the solution having demonstrable behavior change impact in the organization. And so to measure that, we go out to the participants, line managers, and their direct reports following the end of the program, typically 1 month after the program, to measure, are we seeing the habits? Are we seeing that desired behavior change being frequently applied across organization? And then that helps us in a robust way understand, is behavior change taking place in the organization? And so I'm pleased to be sharing with you some of our results. So feedback from that participant impact questionnaire is extremely positive, as is shown in the photograph of those participants in Kuala Lumpur in July this year. The Net Promoter Score is an industry standard metric, and it shows high rates of Haleon lead participants who would recommend this program to another colleague. And so that's a reliable metric and proxy of if you'd recommend it to someone else, you're seeing it as being useful and applicable and helpful to you on your leadership journey. And then crucially, the quality of the module content is a key indicator that we're interested in as well. We see that as being really important because if the content's considered good quality, then you're more likely to apply that learning in the workplace. And of course, this data is just a quick snapshot from participants at the end of module one. As I alluded to, what we're really interested in is whether or not we can see observable behavior change and application of the habits after the delivery of the learning program. And so as part of that discovery work at the beginning of our partnership, we mapped out a learning strategy which took the key elements of the leadership standards and we mapped behavior change to each of those 4 key pillars. So we could see where we could observe and measure discernible impact across those leadership standards. And we collect data from the participants, their line managers, and their direct reports to really observe, is the behavior change taking place? And so let's share some of that behavior change. Across those 4 key pillars, we are seeing and observing as a result of this program, really positive behavior change across the leadership standards. As you can see in this slide, a very high level summary. From the participants, they're telling us they are applying the habits in their daily working lives. For example, 99% are sharing positive feedback with a direct report, A similar number are also reporting to be exhibiting a growth mindset, moving from that fixed mindset to a growth mindset and sharing mistakes with their team, which is one of the key indicators of a growth mindset. We're not only hearing that self-reported data, we're also hearing that from line managers. So we go out and we survey them and we ask them, hey, are you observing these habits being applied by your direct reports who are in the program? And they're telling us that they're seeing an improved ability of those lead graduates to be leading others and managing performance more effectively, which is something that is really important to Haleon in our partnership. And we're also seeing really positive progress here from direct reports as well. Of course, there's more to do to shift the dial here, where participants of the program need to be, applying more efforts to continue to apply these habits on a continual basis. But that's where our partnership doesn't stop just after delivering the program. As Amy's mentioned, we've created a whole suite of tools and assets for those lead participants to continually be going back to them, to be using them in their everyday working lives and at the key moments that matter across the Haleon performance cycle to really help them have those high quality everyday conversations and interactions with their teams and colleagues. In addition to the really positive behavior change data, and this slide just really shows some of the program metrics that indicate the really high uptake of the program globally in the last 18 months from when we launched out the program. And one of my reflections when looking at this data is, given that this is an optional program, people are not forced to go on it. These numbers really show that, along with behavior change, that this program is addressing a fundamental business critical need, and that participants and the business is finding this a really helpful, engaging program. We've got a critical mass of graduates in the program now, 875 graduates, and that comprises 53 cohorts. And the global reach of this program is truly impressive, covering 24 different countries where we've delivered in person in 21 different locations, and that we're seeing roughly a 50-50 split. And one of the other really positive indicators here is our ability to deliver in different languages. So we've delivered in at least 10 languages, covering French, Russian, Spanish, Chinese, Italian, Slovak, Portuguese, Brazilian, Japanese, and Korean. And I'm sure we're probably going to have a few more of them to come next year, where we have at least 24 different cohorts lined up to be partnering with next year. So these numbers are really, really impressive. The behavior change, is wonderful to see that we're seeing those habits being applied on a day-to-day basis across the business. But hey, let's hear from a human being who's been part of the program and hear in their own words about the impact that the LEAD program's having.
Last week, we completed here in Alcalá the LEAD program for leadership development. It was a very interactive and instructive training. For me personally, it allowed me to reflect on the skills I had, but especially helped me gain the ones I didn't. I truly appreciated the opportunity to participate in this program. It was a really great experience. Now I feel more confident that I can be a great leader.
It's so wonderful hearing Natalia's testimonial there. And I'm sure if we had time, we could have got many, many more, Polly, from across the business. And I'd just really like to use this moment to reflect with you about, based upon that journey we've been on, could you share some more feedback that you're hearing from across the business on the impact that LEAD is having across the Haleon ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And it's great to just sit and reflect as you were showing the data slides, and data's great. In terms of the critical mass, as you say, of people, nearly 900 people graduating through this, and 1,000 more sort of signed up to that. So, the data's great, but the data also of the behavioural changes is really something, as you mentioned, we want to be curious about. That's our mindset. We want to take that forward. It's great to hear that the learners are applying and they feel they're applying the habits, and it's fantastic to hear that their own line managers are observing that and noticing that. But it's also, as you said, hearing from the direct reports is something, there's still room for improvement there. And those direct reports, don't forget, are going through the whole same mindset and behaviour change as we move into a new industry. So we've also got to help them to understand what it is they're looking out for in their leader as they allow their leader to practice. So that's an interesting space that we'll keep looking into. But some great quotes here on the screen. And if I think about it from the learner's perspective, we're hearing really positive feedback, not just from Natalia there, but they love the bite-sized learning. They love the fact that this is modular and it really helps them to absorb the information. It helps them to practice a habit. And because the modules are all designed in the same look and feel, and they're all designed with sort of habit building, practice, etc. in there, the cognitive capacity to sort of understand each module is a lot clearer. So they can concentrate on those habits. So they are loving that they've got practical tools to help them in an everyday life. And they're also, I'm hearing, it allows introspection. And especially from experienced leaders who probably felt they had less to learn, but arguably the shift that they need is the greatest to bring us from the previous mindset to where we need to be. So it's really given that opportunity for introspection. From the business perspective, critical mass, as you said, is definitely one thing. But also you take 25 people or up to 30 people in a cohort at one time, and they have the opportunity to discuss and share, and they're using the same language, using the same tools. That's powerful. And when you multiply that into the 875 people, so that is really that tipping point of change. And that's the muscle that we need to build. And I feel this helped us to, the whole focus we've put on leadership development, helped us to really kickstart our learning agenda and our growth agenda beyond just the lead program. But for people who've participated in it, it's really given them that appetite to develop further. So I think both perspectives are important there as well as the data.
Great, Polly. And the reflection I'm having listening to you there is one of the things that we've done throughout our partnership together is ensured what we're doing with the lead program and the first line leaders has coherence with your other leadership development solutions. So we make sure there's that coherence and consistency across the program. We've had a great question coming in from Hannah, which is posing us a challenge, and we love a challenge here at NLI. So remarking that our net promoter score is 54, and what can we do to be driving that up to 80? So I'm going to ask Amy, do you have any quick reflections on that? And I can share some of my thoughts.
Yeah, I do have some reflections. It's a great question, so thank you, Hannah. My first thought is that particular data point was only captured after their first experience in the modular program. So in module 1, we've given them either a 90-minute workshop, a virtual workshop, and then we've asked them, what do you think so far? So I think this initial data point needs to be, with that in mind. I think that's their initial impression. I would like it to be higher also, but it's not the whole program as a whole. So I would rather look at what would they say after, say, the 3rd module or the 5th module, especially after that coaching session as well. So that's my first thought of when we get the data. But Ross, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the wider reflection I have there as well is we thought really carefully about how we survey the participants of this program. So it's a big program and it's a big program journey in terms of communications and surveys. So what we did is at the beginning of the partnership, we had a pilot phase where we collected lots of data. And after every module and every coaching circle, participants were surveyed, and we used that data to feed into the business as usual rollout program. And then also what we've done as well is we collect a range of other metrics within that participant impact questionnaire. So I shared just 2 of them for time today, but there's a range of other ones that we use that we analyze together with a Haleon NLI to be driving up that score. And it's something that we keep continually under review. Polly, do you have any reflections there on the NPS score or the kind of overall survey approach to measuring impact on the lead program?
No, hard to add to yourselves as the experts talking on that. I guess my reflection was also about we had high response rate to those surveys, and to me that's the important thing, that we're hearing the feedback, we're hearing from our learners, and we could iterate and adapt. And that was after, as you say, the first module, and we hadn't built all 5 modules when we went live at the time. We built the first module, and then we're building the car as we were driving it, if you like, with the next module. So I think, great question, Hannah. Let us reflect on that ourselves.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest key indicators of success from the NPS score and from the program is people are signing up to this proactively. People want to take part in this. We're having no resistance to people saying, we want to take part in the LEAD program. And we have really high completion rate. We have 78% of people completing the program from when they sign up through to the end. And we have quite a rigorous graduation criteria, because if you don't complete a certain proportion of modules, you can't be considered a LEAD graduate. So we really are pleased to be seeing that high completion rate. We had another question come in on our chat. So did we see, and I'm going to throw this out to Polly and Amy as well. So the question is from saying, did we see many social connections and peer-to-peer sharing and networking outside of the facilitated workshop? And how are we enabling and encouraging this? And I think we have some examples, Polly, from the sites where we did that in between day 1 and day 2.
Great question again, and it's something certainly I absolutely cared about as we were going through in the design process. So if I think about the virtual one first, and Amy, you explained the design of the process, where there's a 90-minute workshop, and then there is a very conscious decision to get back together as what we call a coaching circle after that. So that was naturally keeping that cohort together and those collaboration together. And I've got many examples of those cohort members connecting with people beyond the cohort, especially maybe not after the first module, but after they've done their 3rd and 4th module and they're seeing and hearing the same people. And these are global audience from any part of the company. So not people that naturally work together. So, they were building those connections sort of through that program. From the more manufacturing side, on the face-to-face side, I loved that we put in the space for people to connect afterwards. So they might know each other naturally a little bit better, being based on a site with each other. But what we were short of was actually holding the space often for people. So by just putting in what we call micro workshops, those sort of missions in months 2 and 3, giving them some topic conversations to come back together and practice and talk about, and just holding the space for them was really powerful. And that's where we've seen, beyond the LEAD program, I've got examples of sites where they've continued that on a monthly sort of, lunch and learn, and continuing to have those collaborative discussions. So yes, great examples that we can share of that.
Thank you, Polly. That's wonderful. And Amy, I think that Polly just really alluded to, that goes fundamental to some of the learning design, right? So after each module, there was a mission, and participants were expected to undertake that. So it really almost nudged them towards undertaking that social learning. Could you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So there are 2 key principles that we really wanted to ensure were embedded in this design of the program. One was, if we can give them the opportunity to learn something and then give a little bit of space and come back and discuss it, that spacing is really valuable. And asking the brain to recall what they've learned and then have a discussion about it really helps embed that new language and the new habit or behavior in their system, in their brain. So that was one reason why we wanted to bring them back. The second reason is that we know that there's so much power in social learning. Having to have a discussion with someone, even if you don't have the right answer, it doesn't need to be a formal learning experience. Just having a conversation can do wonders. So to Polly's illustration, we did build into the design for those full day session experiences. We gave them these micro workshop guides and said, here's how you could hold this conversation space. Gave a range of time and length so that they could have that be very flexible. And then we guided them with discussion prompts that would really help bring the habits into their conversation. But it's not a test, and it's not a, show a demonstration, give a presentation. It could be just a conversation. So it was woven into the strategy, and it's thrilling to hear that it continued even beyond the structure that we proposed.
And I think that also just goes to testament to how we're approaching the partnership. And we are continuing our efforts and our work to collaborate together to really be stitching in these habits into the first line leader community. There are a number of different activities. So we to really help managers, because we know they're so important to support those first line leaders who are going through the program. We're responding to business need where we're delivering in-person training sessions to upskill managers and virtual to upskill line managers of lead graduates to help them understand what's happening in the program, to be helping them nudge their teams to be applying those habits. So we're rolling that out in December. Really excited to be doing that at a site in the USA, and then rolling out a virtual 90-minute upskilling session to just really help embed that habit activation across the Haleon ecosystem. The second activity we're undertaking as well to really be embedding that at every level across organization is creating an online e-learning solution, which will be aimed at HR and leadership and the lead alumni, which will be offering them a synthesized version of the program to really be helping embed that common language across Haleon. And finally, the other piece of work that we're really looking to be doing more work on is how can we leverage that critical mass of lead graduates? How can we continue to create those opportunities for those who have gone through and graduated from this program to be the ambassadors, to be continuing to embed that and sharing with their peers and creating a community of practice. And one of the things that we're doing is creating quarterly sustainment sessions to be helping nudge and encourage the lead graduates to be using the suite of tools and resources they have and the key moments that matter in the Haleon performance cycle. So it definitely in some ways feels like we're at the, we're coming towards the end of our session, but we're definitely not at the end of our partnership. We're definitely continuing to do work. And that's been a whistle-stop tour through, 24 months worth of work. Holly, I wonder if you've got any reflections that you'd like to share on the overall partnership or the overall lead program that you'd like to share with the audience today.
Thank you. And yeah, it's been absolutely great to be here and to bring this forward and the work that we've done. And it's really sort of cathartic, actually, reflecting back on this over the last year or so. For me, I think thank you to your team, but thank you to our internal teams, and thank you to all of our learners. I know they're not probably on this audience at the moment, but for embracing the change that we needed and we still need to make. I think what became clear to me through this is leadership. Yes, it's a skill. Yes, it's a passion, but it's also a science. And I have learned so much as I go through the process in terms of the actual habit activation, as well as bringing a global program to this at scale that we are so thrilled has landed so well. So lots of reflections, but yeah, the science is there. Ross,
Thanks,
thank
Polly.
you, and thank you for letting me join today.
Thank you for joining today. I know you've got to dash, so thank you, Polly, for joining us today. And I want to thank everyone who's joined us on this summit session for being with Amy, Polly, and I as we shared this Haleon journey. We hope that you enjoyed listening to the session, and thank you for your interest. And please join other sessions on the summit. There's lots more to come, and I'm looking forward to tuning in. Thanks for your time today. Goodbye, everyone.